I've had a lot of great launches for my GitHub repository. The main problem is that I was usually getting a lot of stars, registration to the system, cloud users, and so on. But I didn't really get a lot of contribution to my own GitHub repository. And the problem is that when you don't get a lot of contribution to your GitHub repository, then you don't have really activity over your GitHub. There is no chance you will be trending, and actually your marketing becoming not so strong. So I have done a few stuff that actually brought me a lot of contributions and got tons of activity into my GitHub repository. Hello, my name is Nevo. Welcome back to the channel. I usually talk about open source, tech, and marketing. While I was working in Novo, I've managed to grow it from 0 to 31,000 stars in 2 years. Lately, my own GitHub repository, Gitroom, was declared one of the fastest growing tech startups by Runa Capital. Today, I'm going to take you into the few steps I've made in order to get a lot more contributions, opening issues, pull requests, and everything that is actually GitHub activity. Before you start up, you want a lot of GitHub issues and a lot of good first issue. What do I mean by that? Most contributors are not clients or customers. They're actually contributors. They are part of the community. That means that they would usually not have any business needs. So if they come to your open source repository, there is a high chance that they will not do anything if they will not see something that they can do beforehand. So, for example, let's say I have my own Gitroom repository that allows you to schedule Reddit posts, Twitter posts, LinkedIn posts, and so on. Contributors will go and check my issues sections. If they don't see any good issue that they can take, there is a very low chance that they would actually create an issue for you. So what you usually want to do is to create a lot of issues that the community can work on. Now, a lot of people think that creating issues is very hard because they try to look at like big features and stuff. And then they say, yeah, but I can't open that. Contributors won't be able to go into this huge code base and contribute all this bunch of code. Now, what I would usually say is start with easier stuff. So maybe refactoring of some interfaces. For example, in Gitroom, I have a lot of objects that don't have any kind of interfaces. It's just like inline typing. So people can refactor them into interfaces. Or the best one usually is to have a lot of integrations. So almost every open source repository have at some point some different kind of integrations. So if you build your module for integration, you have a good docs about how to create different integrations for your product, then people can actually go to this and create for you a bunch of integrations. Now, the best thing about it is that integrations issues are very easy to make. You just go to your GitHub repository, you create 20, 30 integration, which is the same title, just the name of the integration is different, a different content, link to the documentation, and that's it. Like that, you can get 20, 30 issues easy. And then most of the integrations are like very easy issues, so you can mark them with good first issue. The best thing about good first issue is, of course, for beginners, but it's also being aggregated in so many other websites, so people can actually find it in all these aggregated websites. The other very important thing is to create a documentation for your repository. Now, it sounds like obvious, but if the documentation is not good enough, people will churn very easily. You want to have a very good quick start. If you can have a Docker implementation so people can get it started fast with Docker or Gitpod or something like that, make sure your documentation is perfect. Now, once you've done the internal part, you can move into the external part, and that's your marketing. Now, most of the marketing that I've made over the years usually would bring clients to me, just like an article about explaining about some different library. But you can actually create different type of content that have a different edge. For example, how you can nail a job by contributing to open source and then put your GitHub repository inside. Or things like how you can learn a lot more stuff by contributing to open source. Everything that is really focused for contributors. Of course, the call to action is to your GitHub repository, but this time it's a little bit different because instead of asking for stars, you basically ask for contribution, and that works amazingly well. If you like this video so far, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. I think this content is super unique. Every like, every subscription, every bell icon that you press helps me a lot. Now, what I've done, I did a very nice use case. I went into Upwork and I opened a new job about just finding a full stack developer for Gitroom. And when I've done that, I got like so many generic messages, so many generic stuff that was really hard for me to kind of understand who is good for me, like who is the right person that I should hire, because there's so many risks. And after this article, I've actually went to Dev.to and created an article about how contributing to open source can help you to land a new job. I've put there all this stuff around Upwork and how I can find anybody, and if you actually contribute to my repository, I know your level and it's so easy for me to actually hire you. And this brought so many people. All the created issues that I've talked about before started to fill up with comments and people want to start working on them. So that worked amazingly. The other thing that you want to do is to have a retention for contributors. What do I mean by that? If you check most repositories, you will see that there is a contributor. They contributed something and then you have never heard about them again. So you're basically working on acquisition basis. Like you get more contributors all the time, but you don't have old ones contributing to you again. Just like in every product, in order to solve this thing, you need to work on your retention. So let's take an example about Novu. In Novu, we created a page called Community Heroes. What we've done that is putting medals for different contributors about the amount of contribution they have done to our open source repository. So the more contribution they get more medals, they get more recognition. Then they can take these special pages that they have and they can share it on X, or they can send it to a job interview. They just get a lot of credibility and certification from the company itself. So they actually have a place for themselves to get recognition. Next thing is Discord. Now, very mature companies sometimes don't have a Discord, they don't need to. But if you're just starting out, or a 1 year, even 2 years, your documentation is not the best. And you have a lot of unresolved stuff that people don't know what to do. So they get stuck. Now, what people do when they get stuck? So they can search for Stack Overflow, probably it's empty because you are very new. The only way is to actually talk to you. And this is where Discord shines, because you can open a support forum on Discord that people can put their support tickets, you can answer them, or other community members can answer them. And that's super important because that's the only way they can actually get answers for their questions. There is another cool thing, it's called Answer Overflow. Answer Overflow is really cool because you can actually expose your Discord conversation that you answered publicly on the web. That's really cool because then if people search for it, they can also find the conversation and understand what to do. Like there is no reason not to use this. And if you've liked this video, please make sure you watch my previous video on why open source is not marketing.